Hey, welcome to the Kingdom Podcast, the place where two random guys get together to share their revelations from the Word. This is your host, Josh, and I'll be joined by my co-host, Ainath. We hope this episode encourages you. Let's get started. Hey, welcome to the podcast. Once again, this is your host, Josh, and I'm joined by Ainath. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 1. If you haven't seen it, it's called The Heart Behind Kingdom Revelation and the Kingdom Podcast. It is on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. So we are now on episode 2, where we're actually going to go through one of our revelations on our Instagram page. And this one was posted by me. So that's how I'm doing the intro. And
wow, take the credit for it.
I mean, could you explain my revelation for me?
No, it's a team effort though. Well, I spell checked it.
Yes, you spell checked it. And let's just say it had some errors after you've checked it.
Wow, thank you so much.
Okay, so the revelation that we'll be discussing today is one that has a bike graphic, and it says on the text, downhill slope ahead, Galatians 3:3. So I'm going to talk about it, and then Ainath's going to interrupt me in the middle if he has stuff to say. Respectfully interrupt me if he has stuff to add. But I'm just going to expound on what was going through my mind, what did I feel like God was telling me in this moment. So I'm just going to go straight to it. So when I was one day going around my village here, I was biking, and there was this time when I was just pedaling, and I realized that I wasn't really adding to the speed as I was pedaling my bike. And I realized that there was this very, very slight downhill slope on the road that I was going on. And during that moment, I was reminded of a verse I was reading, I think a few days ago, which was Galatians 3:3. So let me just read the verse real quick so that there's a bit of context as to how that downhill slope relates to that verse. So the verse in the New International Version says, "Are you so foolish? After beginning by means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by means of the flesh?" And when I was going through that downhill slope, I felt like that was a push that was put in place there, not by my works, but by something someone else had done. In this case, the village construction company. But in life,
shout out to the construction
folks making my bike ride easier. But what I'm talking about here, or why this is connected to the verse, is in our lives, the village construction company would be God putting in place things in our life that He had put in place so that we can move forward in what He has called us to do. And so those are the downhill slopes of life. And most of us think of downhill slopes as negative things. It's like, oh, things are going downhill. But in this case, it's actually pushing you forward without you exerting your own strength. And I want to read part of the revelation that I had here, because I think this is an important question we all need to ask ourselves, which says, have you ever been through a situation where God came through with exactly what you wanted? Maybe even more than what you wanted. God provided you with the dream job, but a few months later, you're barely getting through the day. God gave you the partner you've been praying for, and now you can't seem to stand him or her. You might find yourself asking, what went wrong? Or where did I go wrong? How did the blessing turn into a curse? And oftentimes when we try to do things on our own strength after God had started it, that's when things kind of start to fall apart. Because what God had started in the Spirit, He intends for us to finish in the Spirit. And that was kind of what I was getting at with the bike. Well, it's not an illustration, with my bike experience. I was still trying to pedal, still trying to go faster, but I realized I was just tiring myself out unnecessarily. I would have still kept moving if I had just stopped and let the downhill slope carry me along. Same is true with a lot of the things that God is doing in our lives. We would still keep moving, but we struggle through it. We want to do things on our own strength. And when we have problems, it's like, okay, let me use my intelligence. Let me try to solve this. Or let me just figure this out, God. You just stay there. I know you started it, but I can figure this out.
Let me try finishing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the main essence of it. That the caption I put on the post is, why strive when you can stride? Like, I'm not saying that there are moments where God is just gonna magically do everything, because it does say in James that faith without works is dead. So we do have a partnership with God with regards to these things. And just like the biking illustration, you don't get to go on the downhill slope unless you've been biking for a while. So we have a part to play. It's a partnership, but we gotta leave what's up to God, and we do our part. So I read it somewhere, I forgot where, but you do your part and God will do his. So we have our part to play.
I think I said that. That's my quote.
No, you're not that wise. Not wise enough for that quote. I'm kidding. But sometimes we try to do God's part and not just our part. So like when we start struggling, let's say with a job, now we're trying to get our strength and energy on our own. When we got started, it was really all just relying on God. And so God has his part to play, and you have your part to play. Is there something you can add to this, Aina?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much in our life where God leads us into something, right? Sometimes it's relationships, jobs, it's just plans, right? He gives you direction on where to go, turn left, turn right.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we take those steps of faith and we're like, okay, God, we're going. But the moment things get difficult, now we're like, God, this doesn't seem right. And so what we try to do is now we start, God's already put us on the downhill slope. He's carrying us forward.
Yeah.
But the issue is sometimes when the troubles come, and it will, right? We will always go through something difficult when we're walking with God, because the Bible says that your trials are building character and just building yourself up. And so what happens oftentimes is we're going downhill, right? We see something that we don't like, and what ends up happening is then we start saying, no, this ain't right. If God took me here, I shouldn't have any problems.
Yeah.
And so then we start peddling, putting in our own effort, trying to figure out, how do I get away from this? Because I saw something that I didn't like. But God had every intention for you to go through that, because he is planning and he is doing something in you. So I think that the biggest part of all of this is faith, to know that what God started, he will finish, right? And when he leads you into something, the biggest problem for us is we don't trust him till the end. We trust him in the beginning. We're like, God, I believe, I'm stepping out in faith. But then after I step out in faith, I come across things that I don't like, that I find difficult, and I'm peddling. I'm
You're
stealing.
striving on your own.
I'm striving on my own. I'm depending on my own strength, my own ability. And that often leads to more chaos, more trouble. And that's what leads us to actually giving up on what God fully intended on you to complete.
Yeah, and it says in Philippians 1:6, and I quote this on the Revelation, and I'm going to roughly paraphrase. Well, it's very close to the actual words, but it's, he who began the good work in you will be faithful to complete it. So we just have to remember that if he began it in our lives, he'll be the one to complete it as well. And sometimes we forget that fact, because sometimes we think, oh God, okay, you started it, now it's my turn to continue it. No, who will bring it to completion? It's going to be God. Yes, you have your part to play, but we cannot forget that God was the one who began it. And there's at the very end of the Revelation, I'm just going to quote this. It says, as we go through those things, we need to remind ourselves who got us in this, because he's the one who will get us through it.
Good.
Too.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
If we just keep that in our minds, a lot of the struggles that we are going through, we're actually struggling through unnecessarily. Like, say, for example, God had led you to start a family, and then suddenly the family, you're struggling to provide for them, and now you're like, okay, God, I can't provide for my family. And I remember this one time I was at a conference, and this pastor was talking about, he was struggling with that very same thing, and God asked him, hey, I forgot the pastor's name, but hey man, who's the provider of your family? And initially, if you were faced with that question, you would say, me, I'm the father, I'm the provider for my family. And then he came to the realization that no, I am not, and I never will be the provider of my family, because the provider of my family is God. So that's kind of the moments where we're peddling unnecessarily, when we're stepping into a role that wasn't ours to begin with. That the provider in the family was never meant to be him. It was always meant to be God. And so that's the revelation there that let's not step into what God's role is. And if we've started it in the Spirit, we've started it in Him, let's finish it in Him as well.
Yeah, just one more thing I want to add is that oftentimes what happens is when we start striving, when we start putting in the effort where we shouldn't be putting in the effort, and things start to fail, what then happens is you start questioning God, and you're like, God, why did you put me here? Why am I going through this? But the reality is that your situation got worse because you decided to take the wheel when God was fully in control. I think one of the biggest things we forget is that God is in control. Things happen that we don't control, but God never lost his control. And so there's so much, and that's why I keep saying there's faith that is required, because when you realize, hey, God's still in control of my situation, God's still pushing, he has put me on this downhill slope, he will carry me through till completion. I've got to trust that he will never lose control, even if things don't happen the way I expected it to happen.
And I think, just as a final reminder, yes, God is in control, but because this is a partnership, if you suddenly I want to do things my way, God's like, okay. Just know that I'm here when you want to start walking with me again. But God does give us that freedom to try to figure things out. But at the end of the day, it's really trusting in him that's going to bring us on the right path, bring us on the right way. So if you guys learned something today, well, please do share it with us. We would love your feedback. You could hit us up at our Instagram page at kingdom.revelation, KNGDM.revelation. And we just encourage you for the rest of the week till the next episode. Well, I hope it's just going to be a week till the next episode comes out. But for the rest of the week till the next episode comes out, do practice that exercise of reading the word and trying to get a revelation out of it. Don't just read it and it's like, okay, cool story, but trying to find what is God speaking to you about today. And it might not be you, it might be for someone else, but we just keep encouraging you to seek out those kingdom revelations in your life. So this is your host once again, Josh, and I am joined with your name. If you forgot your name, you
were joined by Anath.
All right, and we hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. To see our posts before they're talked about here, visit our Instagram page at kingdom.revelation. That's KNGDM.revelation. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we encourage you to seek God's revelations in your own life. See you soon.